In this tutorial, we're going to look at modelling the three key areas that form the Lionhead door knocker. We're going to look at all of the modelling tools along with the finishing tools to create the results that you can see here. We'll start by modelling the handle. Once we've created the handle, we'll move on and model the base shapes. One key thing to note here with the base shapes is this recess area. Now this recess area is here so that we can house the handle. So that handle is going to slot in place here. We'll then model the face shapes, and ultimately the face shape is going to sit on top of the base shapes using the keyway. Now, as you saw in the concepts and theory presentation video, how that keyway works. So we're going to create a pocket on top of the base shape, a female version of the pocket on the underside of the face shape so that the two can slot together. Also on the underside of the face shape, which will be covered in the toolpath summary video, you will also have this recess area underneath the face shape to house the top side of our handle. And so ultimately the two will lock in place and our handle will sit nicely in between the base and the face shapes. So let's just go and close this down. So let's go and open an existing file. So from the Lionhead Drawing Files project folder, we're going to open the lionhandle.crb3d and then press open. Okay, so this is the handle file. So we're going to start by modelling the handle. Now we spoke in the last tutorial, in the drawing tutorial, we spoke about using the extrude tool to model our handle and using the 2-rail sweep to create the pendant area at the bottom of our handle. Now what we're missing here is a vector that represents a cross section, so I need to create that. So I'm going to come over to draw a circle. Now the diameter, I'd like to give that a diameter of 6.6 inches and then press create. Okay, I don't know where that's gone, and that's because that's put that at x13, y 6.2832. That must have been from a preset with this file, and I can see that over there. So it's always good to zoom out if you can't see that. So I'm going to close that down. I'm just going to take that vector there, and then I'm just going to bring that over here, and then we'll use this option to zoom to fit. Now when we're using tools like the extrude tool and the 2-rail sweep, our cross sections need to be open vectors. Now at the moment this circle is a closed vector, so we need to open that up. So I'm going to select that vector, I'm going to come over to node edit mode, I'm just going to zoom in a little, right mouse click on this span here and say delete span, right mouse click on this span here and delete span. So now I'm left with a semicircle. And the reason for that is that the way that we're going to machine our handle is we're going to use two-sided machining. So ultimately we're going to have two halves that's going to represent that circle. And we'll look more at that when we come to the toolpath summary presentation. So for now, let's have a look at how we can model the handle along with the pendant. So we're going to use the same cross section for both processes. So let's just use the option here to zoom to fit, and then we're going to use this one, tile windows vertically, that way I can see the 2D view on the left and I can see the 3D view on the right hand side. And so to create the handle we're going to use the extrude tool. To access the extrude tool we need to go into the modelling tab. So in here we're in the modelling tab, and this is the tool we want to use, the extruder shape using one or more centerline vectors. Now using that tool we need to select a vector that's going to represent a drive rail. In this case we're going to select that handle and we're going to say use selection. So we can see now it's transformed that vector into a drive rail. We can see the start point represented by this green node, and it's travelling in this direction counterclockwise. The next thing we need to do is select a cross section. I've got my cross section here, so I'm going to select that and I'm going to apply it to that node there. You can see it's applied that all the way around. Just so I get nice mitered corners, I'm going to apply one to the corner here, and I'm going to apply one to this corner here, and then I could go ahead and give that a name. Let's call that one handle, and then press apply, and we can see that shape there. So I'm happy with that, so we can close that down. Just put that back in the Z view. Now the next shape we're going to create is going to represent this pendant at the bottom here. before I create that, I don't need this guideline anymore, so I'm just going to click over here just to temporarily hide that. I don't need that in the modelling stage. So to create my pendant, I'm going to use a 2-rail sweep. So let's go into the 2-rail sweep form. So the first thing we need to do is select our drive rails. So I'm going to select this one here, shift and select this one here. Then I'm going to say use selection. We can see that the start points on each of those vectors is in the same place. We're travelling from right to left, so that's okay. The next thing I need to do is select my cross section. So I'm going to select this vector here, and if we just press apply, see how that looks. We can take a look at that. Let's just zoom in there. You can see we've got something funny going on here, and that's because our combine mode is set to add. So what it's doing, it's currently adding on top of the composite model that we've already got there. In this case, what we want to do is we want that to blend in with our model. So if we use this merge option here, we can see now it's blending in to the handle that we created just. Okay, so I'm happy with that, so we can give that a name. We're just going to call that one pendant, and then we can press apply, and then we can close that down. Okay, so let's just put that back in Z. So let's just take a moment to think about our handle and how that's going to sit within our base shapes. Now remember, we saved out all of our files with all of the other layers. So let's go to our layers tab and take a look at the base shapes. Okay, so you can see the base shapes here. Now if we just zoom in on the 2D view, you can see that our handle is going to come in this area of our base shape. What we need to do is create a recess on the base shape so that it can house the other half of our handle. And you'll see this will make more sense when we come to model the base shapes, which we will do shortly. Now, in order for us to use this as a working knocker, it would be okay as is. However, we could get a little bit of slide from side to side when using the handle as a knocker. So what we could do is look at modelling in a shape that's going to lock the handle within the recess of the base shape and within the recess of the bottom of the face shape, and that's going to house that nicely in place so that we don't get any movement from the handle side to side. We only have one way that it can move, and that's up and down in a door handle knocking motion. So to do that, I'm just going to model in a shape that's going to sit in the centre of our handle. So if we just zoom out, so if we go to our drawing tab and we use the option here to zoom to fit and switch on to the 2D view and do the same there, so zoom to fit there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look at modelling in that shape. Now I'm just going to maximise the 2D view, say zoom to fit, and then I'm going to draw a rectangle. What might help is me bringing up that guideline again, so I'm going to bring that up. I'm just going to snap to the centre point there of that vector and the centre point, the halfway line of our job. And I'm just going to draw a square for now, and then I'm going to give that a width here of say 0.25, and I'm going to give that a height of 0.6. So I need to make that 0.6 so it's the same width as our handle. So I'm going to put 0.6 in there and then press apply and close that down. And I'm going to take that, I'm just going to try and snap that to the centre area there. If we just zoom in, it might help a little, and we can snap that in place there. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go into node edit mode. So let's go node editing, and here I'm going to change this span into an arc. So I'm going to press A there, and I'm going to do the same this side. Let's say A here, and then I'm going to delete this span here, and I'm going to delete this span here. And so I'm going to use a 2-rail sweep in order for us to model this extra section that's going to go over our handle. That should help lock that handle in place when it's sat in between the base shape and the bottom of the face shape. So we're going to use the same cross section, so let's just go and tile our windows, and then I'm going to go into the modelling tab and use the 2-rail sweep form. Let's just zoom in. I'm going to take these two vectors, so hold down shift, say use selection, and we're just going to come out there, and then we're going to take this cross section here and press apply. Okay, so you can see we've got some strange results there. So we've got what looks as though it's a crossover, and I can see instantly why that's happened, and that's because my start points are on different sides. So I'm just going to change that. So we'll go right mouse click, say reverse rail. So now the start points are both on the left hand side, travelling in the right hand direction, and then if I press apply, you can see that there. If I set that to merge, we can see it's created this nice round effect over here. I'm just going to call this one lock, and then I'm going to go ahead and press apply, and I'm going to close that down. And so now I should have a mechanism that's going to lock this handle in place, so it's not going to move side to side. So what I need to do there is take these vectors here, and I also need to take this cross-section vector here, and I'm going to copy these vectors over to the base shapefile along with the face shapefile in order for us to get the correct recessed version of this shape for when we model that recessed shape that houses the handle in place. So this will become more apparent later on when we come to model the base shapes along with the face shapes. So let's just right mouse click and press copy here. And then what I'm going to do is we're done with this file now, so I'm going to go ahead, file, save as. In the modeling files project folder, I'm going to save that as lion handle. I'm just going to put that there in the project folder so you can access that as well. So let's just close this down, and then we're just going to open an existing file. So let's go back into the drawing folder. We're going to open up the files, and we're going to open up the base shapes. And so if I go to my layers tab and switch on the handle, just make that the active layer, I'm going to right mouse click and press paste. So I've got the cross section, and I've got the vectors that represent that locking system that we put in place for our handle. So let's just switch off the handle layer for now, along with the main layer. We're just going to look at working with the base shapes. So let's just switch the base shapes layer on. Now in this case, as I'm working with lots of different components, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a new layer. We're going to call this layer components. And I'm just going to move that up the list just below the bitmap layer. So any components that I create will be added to this layer as it's the active layer. We can see it's the active layer as it's bold, but it won't interfere with my base shapes layer, which I've still got switched on. Nothing will be affected in this layer because this is not the active layer. So that's the active layer, so any components I create now is going to be added to this layer. So let's go over to the modeling tab, and we'll go and tile our windows so we can see both the 2D and the 3D view. So we're going to start by looking at some of the base shapes. So let's just organise our component tree in advance. So let's just right mouse click here. I'm going to rename this level as I'm working with various different components. I'd like to organise my component tree well in advance. So I'm just going to call this level base shapes. Just going to put that in there. So base shapes, any components that I create now is going to be added to this level. So I'm going to start by creating the main base shape, which is this face shape here. So with that selected, let's go over to the modeling tools. We're going to use the create shape from vectors. In this case, as I'm working with the base shape, I need to use a flat shape. The reason for that is we need it flat so that our face shape can sit on top there. So we're going to use the flat profile. We're going to give that a height of 1 inch exactly, and we're going to give that a name. So let's just call that simply base shape, and then press apply. Then we can close that down. Okay, so there's our base shape. So you can see it's quite high. That's okay because we're going to look at modelling our main. It's going to sit around the side there later on in this tutorial. So the next thing I'm going to create is the recess shape for our handle. Okay, so if I just go to our layers tab, and if we just switch on the handle layer here, we can see we've got all the vectors that we need. Now in this case, I only need to create a recess shape that's going to sit through this area here where the top of the handle is going to be sat. So I'm going to take this vector here and I'm just going to go to Node Edit. I'm just going to right mouse click on this span here and say delete span, right mouse click here and say delete span here, as I don't need that. And then I'm also going to take these vectors and just delete those as well. So I'm going to take this vector here, and what I need to do is create an extrusion like we did to create the handle, but rather than using the same vector we used to create the handle, I just want to make it a little bit larger to accommodate the size of the handle, just so we've got a little bit of an allowance in there. So with that vector selected, let's go over to our drawing tab and we're going to use the option to set selected object size. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is just add in a 0.05 in this case. Okay, so we're making that width of that 0.65, height's going to be 0.325, and then we could go ahead and press apply. We can see it's changed, and we can close that down, and then if we use this option here, we can zoom to fit. Now as we've altered the size of the handle cross section, we also need to alter the size of these vectors that represent the lock area. So with that vector selected, let's go over to set size. Again, I'm just going to change that, add on a 0.05, so we're going to make that 0.3, press apply. I'm going to select the bottom one and also make that one 0.3, press apply, and then we can close that down. So now we're ready to model in that recess area for the handle. So let's just go into the modeling tab. To help us see the part a little bit better, I'm just going to undraw the base shape component, and then we can go ahead and go and extrude this shape. So we're going to take this vector here and we're going to use the extrude tool and say use selection, and then we apply our cross section. So I'm going to select this vector here. We can give that component a name, so we're going to call that one handle recess, and then we could go ahead and press apply. Okay, so you can see that there, and then we could just go ahead and close that down. And now I'm going to select these two vectors that represent the lock area. We're going to use the 2-rail sweep in this case. We'll say use selection, and then we'll apply that cross section. Give that a name, so we're just going to call that one lock, just like we did when we created the handle. Press apply. See that there? It's currently set to add, so let's set that to merge so it blends in with the recess shape that we've just created, and I'm happy with what we've got there. So let's just close that down. So what I'd like to do now is just take that and crop it to the shape of our face. So let's just take both of those, so select those first, and then I'm going to hold down Shift and select the vector that I'd like to crop that component to. And we're going to use this option here to clear area of selected component outside selected vectors. The software is going to warn me that we need to bake that before we continue. That's okay, I'm happy to do that, so we could go ahead and press OK. Okay, so there we go. So now if I switch on the base shape, you can see how that looks. Last thing we need to do now is just set that to subtract so we have the recessed shape. So let's go right mouse click on that component, go to the combine mode and set that to subtract. And there we have our recessed shape. Let's just put that back in Z, and then we'll go into the drawing tab. So now that we're finished creating the handle recess, we can go into the layers tab and we're going to switch off the handle. Let's go into the modeling tab. The next shape we're going to create is going to be this ear shape here. I've got a closed vector here, and the reason for that is I'd like to use the create shape tool to create this component. So with that selected, let's go over to create shape from vectors. In this case, I'd like to use a curved or round profile here. So working with a natural shape, it's best to use this profile. And then for the angle, I'm going to up that up to 90 degrees. We can see how that looks there. I'm just going to use this option here to merge. That way it will blend in to the current model that we've got there. I'm going to give that a base height of 0.35. Just press space to enter that in. And I'm also going to scale that to 0.35 also. Let's give that component a name, so we'll call that one ear, press apply. Now we're ready to create the component that's going to represent this inner ear here. Now to do that, I'd like to use this same modeling function, so I'm just going to use this option here to start a new component. Then I can select a new vector. So I'm going to select this one here. Again, I'm going to go for a round profile, 90 degrees. We're going to scale the height of that. So let's just scale that to say 0.25 and press apply. Okay, you can't see anything at the moment because that's currently set to merge. So let's just set that to subtract. We want that to sit within the ear shape that we've just created. And if we just zoom in and take a look at that, okay, it's not too bad. I think it's a little bit too deep, so maybe we'll just decrease the height of that to be 0.15. Press space to enter that. You can see we've got a nice subtle shape there, so I'm happy with that. So let's give that a name. We'll call that one inner ear, and then we could go ahead and press apply. Let's close that down. We'll just put that back in Z. So now that we have the left ear, we can go ahead and create a copy of the two components to create the ear on the right hand side. So I'm going to take inner ear here. Okay, I can see my vectors selected, so I'm just going to click outside the space just to deselect that. And I could select the ear, shift and select the inner ear. I'm going to select them again to put that into transform mode. Let's go over to mirror selected objects and to flip that about job center. We also want to create a mirrored copy here, and we're going to go ahead and flip horizontal. You can see we've got our mirrored version on the other side. So let's just close that down. Let's just click in the space to just deselect that ear there. So we've got our ears, we've got the base shape and that handle recess. Next shape we want to create is this chin area here. Now, just to keep my componentry organised, what I'd like to do is insert a new level. So let's just minimise this level here, and I'm going to right mouse click on the base shapes level, and we're going to insert a new level, and let's rename that level by right mouse clicking again, and we're going to rename that level to be chin. The combine mode of this level is currently set to add. Now, to help me in advance, I'm going to set this to merge. So let's go to combine mode, set that to merge. Anything that I create now within this level is ultimately going to merge in with the current composite model. So everything that sits within the base shapes level. So the first thing we need to do is model the main chin shape. So we're going to take this vector here, and we're going to go over to create shape from vectors. Now again, as we're working with a natural shape, we're going to go for this curved profile here. We're going to up the angle to 90 degrees. Let's just take that base height off, so we're going to put base height of 0 in here. We'll scale that to say 0.45 in this case. Let's give that a name, so we'll call that one chin, press apply. We can see how it looks. Okay, so you can see that's very low here, so I could do with that base height just to lift that up so it's coming up almost to the top of the flat 1 inch high area here. So let's put that base height in of 0.5 and then go ahead and press apply. Okay, so that looks good. Just to point out here, you'll notice that the combine mode here is set to add, and you can see that it is currently blending in with our model, and that's because we've got this component set within a level that is merging with the level below it, so these base shapes here, so that's why it's merging in. So let's just close that down, and we'll put that back in Z there. So the next set of shapes I'd like to create are going to represent sort of the detail or the fur on top of the chin here. So if we just go in a 2D view and zoom in to that area, you can see that I have lots of open vectors here, and the reason for that is I'd like to extrude a cross section through all of these vectors to give the look of fur or some detail sat on top of the chin shape. So as I've got my vectors that represent the rails, what I need to do is create some cross sections. Now the easiest way for me to create a cross section is just by drawing a rectangle. So I'm going to go into the draw rectangle tool, and I'm simply going to just draw in quite a small rectangle. Then I'm going to close that form down, and I'm just going to zoom in on that rectangle, and here we need to alter the shape so that it works as a cross section. Now it's currently a closed shape, so I need to open that up. So to do that, I'm going to go into node edit mode. I'm going to right mouse click on the bottom span here and say delete span. I don't need that, and now we've got an open vector which we could use as a cross section. Now I don't want to use this shape. I'd like to create a quite a wavy shape. So what I'm going to do is just zoom in here, and I'm just going to insert a few points. I'm going to right mouse click, say insert a point, and right mouse click here and say insert a point. And then I'm going to select all of these nodes here, and I'm going to press S on the keyboard, and that will smooth them all. So now I can really tweak and alter the shape of this cross section to however I want it to look. As I said, I'm going for quite a wavy look, so it's going to be quite random in this case. Let's just bring that out. And just pull on that handle there. And I could bring that one up a little bit and maybe pull that across. Okay, so I'm fairly happy with the cross section that I've got there. So we're going to run that through all of these rails. However, what I would like to do is to have the start of all of these points start with a flat cross section, and then I'd like them to run into this wavy pattern in the middle, and then I'd like it to come out flat again so that it blends completely into our chin shape. So the way we do that is we just simply draw a flat shape. So I'm just going to draw in a vector like so. So you've got a flat shape, and that will ensure that the start of our components are all going to be flat, and then it's going to come into this wavy pattern, and then if we apply that flat shape to the bottom, we'll see that come and blend right into our chin shape that we've got at the bottom. So let's see how that works. So I'm just going to select all of those vectors that represent the rails. I'm going to hold down Shift and select this one. I must have missed that off. And with those vectors selected, let's go into the Modeling tab. We're going to use the extruder shape using one or more centerline vectors. And with those vectors selected, let's say use selection. I'm going to apply this flat shape. So if I just click on any one of those, you can see it's applied that to the start and to the end points of all of those vectors. And then I'm going to select the second cross section, this wavy cross section that we've got here, and I'm just going to go through each one of those rails and just apply that somewhere in the middle of the length of those rails. You can see that they're all being added there. We're nearly at the end. Okay, so we've got those, so we're running from a flat shape to this wavy shape back to a flat shape. Let's give that a name, so we're going to call this one Chin Detail. And then we could go ahead and press apply, see how that looks. Let's just zoom in there. And so you can see how we're going from a flat shape, even though we can't really see it because it's underneath this base shape here, but we can see how it works on the end here. So we've got the raised shape and it's coming down into the flat shape, so it's just blending into the chin shape that we've got below it. Okay, so I'm happy with that, so let's just close that down. So let's go and create the copy to go on the other side. So we'll select that component, and then let's go over to mirror selected objects. I'm going to flip about job center, create a mirrored copy, and we'll flip that horizontal. Now we can see that's created the copy on the other side there. So let's just close that down and just take a look at that in the 3D view. Okay, so you can see we've got an overlap here. So what I would like to do is just set the combine modes of both of these detail components to merge. So let's select both of those, and then we'll right mouse click here, set the combine mode and set them to merge. Okay, so we can see that we've lost them. That's okay, because all that's happening here is that they're just merging into the chin shape. So if we just switch that chin shape off, we can see that they're still there. But now we can see we've got a nice merging of the two components here. So let's just take those, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bake them. I don't need them as two separate components, so I'm going to turn them into one big component by using the bake option here. So now we've just got one component. Let's switch on that chin shape, and then let's just change the combine mode of the chin detail. Let's make that set to add, so it's sat on top, and we can see now we've got a nice blend between the two areas that we originally had as separate components. So that's the chin detail, so let's just put that in Z, and let's just minimize the chin level, and then we'll go to the drawing tab and choose the option here to zoom to fit for the 2D view. So we need to click in the 2D view there. So now that we have the base shapes and we've got the chin shapes here, we're now ready to look at modelling in the main shapes. So let's go to our Layers tab. I'm just going to switch off the base shapes, we don't need them on for now. Okay, we can see those vectors that I created for the chin details have been added to the active layer, which is the components layer. So I'm just going to take those and I'm going to right mouse click, say move to layer, let's move them to the base shapes. Right then, so let's switch on the main shapes. So we've got the main shapes here. We still want to make the components the active layer, so anything we create will be added to that layer. So let's just go into the modelling tab. Now to model the main shapes, what we want to do is use a two-rail sweep. So when we set up the vectors, we set them up in a way that we've got lots of open vectors that represent our rails, and they represent the overall shape of these strands within the main. If I just zoom out a little, you can see I've also created a series of cross sections that I'd like to use. And these cross sections were created in the same way that we created the cross sections for the chin shape. So it's just creating a series of rectangles and then just creating these wavy patterns inside. And you can take a look at those by just going into node edit mode by pressing N on the keyboard. We'll use this icon here and we can see how those vectors are formed, or the shape of the vector is formed. Okay, so I've got lots of different cross sections. I've got wavy ones, lots of waves in ones, and then I've got vectors that slope down and have less waves within. And so the reason for that is just to give a lot of diversity in the shapes that we're creating. So let's just use this option here to zoom to fit. Now as we're working with a new element of the design, let's go and insert a new level. So I'm going to right mouse click on the chin level and say insert new level, right mouse click on level 1 and let's rename that and call that one main, and then we'll change the combine mode of that level to merge so that it blends in with the current composite model. I'm just going to take these cross sections here, I'm just going to move them in so that they're a little bit closer to the vectors that I'm working with. Okay, now we're ready to go into the two rail sweep form, and we can start by selecting our first set of rails. So let's just start with this shape here. So I'm going to select the first vector here, shift and select the second, and then we could say use selection. And so that's changed those vectors into drive rails. And so now that they're drive rails, we can apply a cross section between the two rails. So let's just go and select this cross section here and just press apply. Okay, so you can see we've got quite a strange shape here. If we just zoom in on the 3D view, you can see it's not really the shape that we intended. It doesn't look like our cross section that we've got here. And the reason for that is if we take a look at our drive rails, the obvious clue is we've got two start points. So the red rail, which we can see here, has a start point at the bottom, and the direction the cross section is flowing on that rail is from the bottom to the top. Now the green rail has the start point at the top here, and so the cross section is starting here and travelling down in this direction. We can see that because the arrows are all pointing down. What we need to do is change the rails so that they're both travelling from the same start point and then ending at the same end point. So all I could do here is just right mouse click on either one of those rails and use this option here to reverse rail. And then if we go ahead and press apply, we can see that we've got more of the shape that we were intending in the first place. We've got some other options in this form here. Now as we're working with natural shapes, I tend to use this option here to scale cross sections with the width. And what that does essentially does what it says. It's going to scale the cross section across the width of the two rails. So where the two rails come closer together, we have less height in the component. Where they're further apart, then we're going to have more height. So if we check that option there and then go ahead and press apply, you can see that difference there. So you can see where they're further apart we have more height, and where the two rails meet at the top there you can see that the height of the component is lower, and so it's just scaling that out with its width. What we could do is we could apply further cross sections if we wanted to. So if I wanted to, I could go ahead and introduce another cross section by simply clicking on that cross section and then just applying that wherever I like. So I'm going to apply that to the end there, and you can see I've lost my original one, so I'm going to select that again and just apply that to the start there. So now we've got 2 here. You can also see that we have these numbers have appeared next to our cross sections, and what that is, it's the software's way of telling us that there are a different number of spans within each cross section. So we've got 8 spans in this vector here. So if we go into node edit mode, we can just see, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we've got the last span between this node and this node here. So we've got 8 spans in here, and this one we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And so what the software is telling us here is that the 2 cross sections that we're wanting to use have different number of spans, and so it can't blend the shape of the cross sections between each spans from one cross section to another. So it doesn't matter in this case. So let's just have a look and see how this looks. So we'll press apply. Okay, so you can see that there. So you can see we're starting off with this rather not so wavy pattern here at the bottom, and then we're blending up into a cross section that has lots more waves within that vector there, and we can see that represented here in the 3D view. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I can give that component a name, so let's just call that one strand 1, and then we'll go ahead and press apply. I'd like to start a new component, so I'm going to use this option here to start new component. Let's just put that in Z there, and then I need to select 2 new rails. So I'm going to take this vector here, shift and select this vector here. Let's say use selection. Okay, so you can see my rails are traveling in the same direction in this case, and then I could just go ahead and apply a cross section. I'm just going to take this one here, and then let's just press apply to see how that looks. Okay, you can see it's obscured behind the ear. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reset that, and I'm just going to come out of the 2 rail sweep form, and I'm just going to switch off the base shapes for the time being, just so we can see how the main looks. I'm also going to switch off the chin level as well. So let's go back into the 2 rail sweep form, and then we're going to go and select this vector here, shift and select this vector here, say use selection. Again, I'm going to apply this cross section here. Let's press apply to see how that looks. Okay, you can see that we've got a funny interaction here, and that's because the combine mode of this component is set to add. What we need to do is make that set to merge so that it blends in there, and then we could give that a name. We'll call that one strand. Press apply. Okay, we also have the ability to alter the height within this form as well. So I'm going to use this option here to scale to an exact height, and I'm going to make that 0.3. Let's press apply and see how that looks. So it's just to lift that up, so it's just going to scale the highest point to whatever value we specify within this form here. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So let's just go and start a new component. So then we'll go and select our next set of vectors. I'm going to take this one here, shift and select this vector here, and we're going to use the option here to use selection. Let's change those into drive rails, and so now we can go ahead and select cross section or several cross sections that we want to use. So I'm going to take this one here and just apply that to the top point here, and then I'm going to select this one here, and then I'm just going to apply that to the end there. I'm also going to scale that to an exact height. Let's just say 0.2, and then we could go ahead and press apply. Okay, so that's not too bad. We might want to up that to 0.25, space to enter that in, and that's okay. Now we can see we've got this component is blending in to the strand that we just created. Now that's okay in this case, as we will be altering the heights of all of the strands that we're going to create here, so I'm not too worried about how they're blending into their neighbouring strands at this case, as we'll be altering the heights once we've created all of the strands for the main. So let's give that a name, so we're going to call that one strand 3, and then we could go ahead and press apply there. And then once we've done that, we can go and start a new component. And so let's just scroll down here so we can see the next set of vectors. We'll take this one here, shift and select this one here. We'll say use selection. So you can see they've now been changed into drive rails, and now we can apply our cross sections. So I'm going to take this one here, just apply that to the top, and then I could try this vector here, apply that to the bottom. So I'm just really trying to vary the cross sections that we're using between each strand here. And we could scale that. Let's try 0.2, see what that looks like. Press apply. Okay, so I'm happy with that. We'll call that one strand 4. Apply that. I'm just going to close the form down for the time being, as I'd like to see how this looks so far with our other shapes. Okay, so you can see it is blending in there, so I'm happy with that. So let's just go back into the 2-rail sweep form. So I'll go up there, and then I'm just going to scroll down here so we can select our next set of vectors. So take this one here, shift and select this vector here, and then we're going to say use selection, and then we need to apply some cross sections. Let's just go this one here, apply that, and then we could go and apply say this one here. And actually I'd like to apply that to the bottom there. So let's say apply and see how that looks. Okay, like that. Let's set that to merge, and then maybe we could just up the height of that to say 0.25, press space to enter that in. Okay, so that's not too bad, happy with that. Let's give that a name, and we'll call that one strand 5. Press apply, and then we can start a new component. Let's just scroll the view down. So I'm going to select my next set of vectors. So I'm going to take this one here, shift and select this one here, say use selection, and I'm just going to select my cross sections. Let's just zoom out a little. I'm going to take this one. I'm going to take this one here, apply that to the bottom, and then I'm going to take this curvy wavy one here and apply that to the top there. Press apply. Let's set that to merge, and then we'll just scale that to say 0.2. Press apply, see how that looks. Okay, I'm happy with that. Let's give that a name. We'll call that one strand 6. Press apply, and then we'll start a new component. Take this vector here, shift and select this vector here, say use vector cross sections. Okay, in this case I'm just going to apply this one here, and we'll just press apply there. Okay, I like the way that looks. Let's give that a name. I'm going to call that one strand 7. Press apply. Then we'll start a new component. Then we're going to take this vector here, shift and select this vector here, say use selection. Okay, so now we need to apply our cross sections. So I'm going to take this one here, apply that there, and then we're going to apply this one to the bottom here, and then press apply there. You can give that a name. We'll call that one strand 8. Press apply. We're going to go and start a new component. I'm going to take this vector here, shift and select this vector here, use selection, and then we're going to apply this cross section here, scale that to 0.2, set that to merge. I'm going to call that one strand 9, press apply, see how that looks. Okay, so I like that. Start a new component, take this vector and this vector, use selection. This time I'm going to apply this cross section, give that a name. I'm going to call that one strand 10, press apply, and then we're going to go and start a new component. I'm going to take this vector here, shift and select this vector here, say use selection, and this time I'm going to apply this cross section, give that a name, call that one strand 11, press apply, and then we'll start a new component. And then we'll take this vector here, shift and select that vector, say use selection, and then we'll apply this cross section, press apply, give that a name, we'll call that one strand 12. And then we could go ahead, press apply, and we'll just close that down. Okay, Okay, so I'm happy with what we've got so far. Okay, I've missed one up here, so let's just take that vector there, shift and select this vector. We'll go into the 2-rail sweep, use selection, and let's apply some cross sections. We'll apply that one there, and then we'll apply this one to the top here, and then we'll give that a name and just call that one strand 13. Set that to merge, press apply, and we can see how that looks. Let's close that down, and we'll just put that in Z, and then let's just go into the 2D view and use the option here to zoom to fit. And I can see in the component tree I've missed a number here, so let's just right mouse click, rename that. We're going to call that one strand 2. So now we're at a stage where we need to think about the heights. Okay, so you can see we've got a lot of height difference between the base shape and our main. So we're going to do two things here. We're going to look at creating an underlined shape to really lift up the main, so we can get it to go almost to the top of our base shape here. And we're also going to alter the individual strands just to ensure we have correct overlap between each one of those components. So we'll start by looking at the underlined shape. That will help us to determine how to individually change the properties of the individual strands. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw up some rails. So let's just put that back in Z there. So we're going to draw 2 vector rails, and then we're going to create a cross section. So let's just go into the drawing tab, and we're going to draw a circle. So I'm just going to roughly position that the centre of the lion. Okay, so you can see I'm out a little bit. I'm just going to go with that, so let's just close that down, and I'm going to take that circle and just using the down arrow key on the keyboard, I'm just going to nudge that down just so we're roughly in that sort of circle area of the shape of our lion. Okay, so I'm happy with that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Control and Shift, and I'm just going to create a copy of this just to roughly go in the middle of this area here, so around the base shapes here. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Let's just check the sizes. Okay, maybe I could make that a little bit smaller, so let's just try 3 and press apply. Okay, we've got an oval shape now, and that's because I had link XY unchecked. So I'm just going to go to edit and say undo size, and I'm going to check this option to link XY. That way when I alter the dimensions of one of these values, it's going to scale the other one in proportion. So you can see that there. So now we're going to have width of 3, height of 3. Let's press apply, and I'm okay with that. So let's just close that down. Okay, so we're now ready to create a cross section. So let's just go and draw a rectangle. I'm going to snap on the right hand side of the inner circle here, snap to the right hand side of the outer circle here, and then let's just give that a height of 0.5 and press create and close. And take that vector, let's just move it down to the bottom, and then we'll go into node edit mode, and then we'll delete the bottom span, right mouse click, delete span, and then I'm also going to delete this node here, so we could use the option to delete point, and then I'm going to turn this span into a Bezier, and then I'm going to select this node here, shift and select this node here, and then I'm going to align this node with this node, so I'm going to press Y on the keyboard. I'm going to do the same for this one. I'm going to select this node first, shift and select the handle and press Y, and then I could just tweak with the shape of this cross section. And so the idea here is we're going to come in at a flat shape at the bottom. So we're going to have a flat shape here, and then it's going to rise up into this curvature and come in at 1/2 inch high. So we're going to come in flat, and it's going to raise up to 1/2 inch. So let's see how that works. So we'll just put that in ISO view. So I'm going to take this vector here, shift and select this vector here. Let's go into the modeling tab, and we're going to use a 2-rail sweep. We'll say use selection. Okay, so we've got our rails selected. Okay, we can see that the direction is the same, so that's okay. And we need to select a cross section. Let's just press apply to see how that looks. Okay, so you can see we've got quite an odd shape there. We've got this sort of empty space here, and the reason for that is because we haven't got this option to fill center within a closed vector rail. So if I just undraw scale cross sections with width, you can see it's automatically checked this option for me. So when I press apply, it's going to fill the rest of that shape in. We also have scale to an exact height checked. Now I don't want that checked. We've already created the height through my cross section, and so we can see how that looks. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So let's just call that one UL shape. So UL is for underlying. We can press apply, and then we can close this 2-rail sweep form down. Okay, so you can see how that looks. So now we can go in and edit the individual strands to ensure that we get some nice height amongst all of those overlapping components. So let's just put that in ISO view. And so to do this, I'm going to maximize the 3D view. I'm just going to work in the 3D view here. Okay, so to select a component I'd like to edit, I'm going to right mouse click. We can see where I've clicked, it's telling me the components that are at that point. So we've got the underlying shape and we've got strand 1. Now it's strand 1 that I'd like to edit, so let's just zoom in a little, and I'm just going to pull on my model just so we can tilt that across so I can see the space that we're working with. Okay, so I'm going to select that again to put it into transform mode. Okay, I've accidentally clicked on the underlined shape, so let's just click into the space here, right click onto the strand, select strand 1, and then select that again to put it into transform mode, and then I'm going to select this blue rectangle at the bottom there to bring up the properties form. Let's have a look at increasing the shape height here, make that say 0.3, and then we could look at increasing the bottom area of this component by using the tilt option. So let's use tilt, and this will use the option to set an anchor. So we're going to select our first anchor point, which is at the top here, and then we can select our second anchor point, or the area that we're going to add material to in order for us to create that tilt, and then we can apply an angle. Okay, so that's at 3.8. Let's try 4.4. Okay, so 5.8 seems to be okay, so we'll go with that. And then we can move on to our next component, which is going to be this one here. So right mouse click, press strand 2. Okay, so you can see straight away we're going to have quite a bit of difficulty getting over this ear shape. So to help me in advance, what I might do is just decrease the height of the ears. So I'm going to right mouse click on the ear, select the ear, and all I'm going to do is apply a fade that's going to go from the top to the bottom here in a diagonal motion. So let's use the fade option, set the anchor, I'm going to go from the top to the bottom over here. 50% seems to be okay. Let's do the same for this ear here. So ear, fade, set anchor, I'm going to go from the top to the bottom. 50%, that's okay. Let's go back to strand 2. So right mouse click to strand 2. Let's have a look at increasing the shape height. Let's make that 0.35. And then we could look at applying a tilt. So let's do a tilt, set the anchor from the top to the bottom here, and then let's just play with that slider until we're at a point that we're happy with. Okay, so that's a bit too much there, so let's just bring that down to around 7. And what I could do in this instance is maybe add in a base height. So let's put in a base height, say 0.05. Okay, so we've still got a little bit more just to clear the ears, so maybe make that 0.1. Okay, that's not too bad. See, there's a little bit more of the ear that I need to get through, so let's try 0.12 and even make that 0.15. And so you can see it's all about just tweaking with the values here. Now because we've put that base height on, we can see now that the overall shape height here is coming well over this flat base shape. So what I may do is just look at decreasing that tilt. So we can go back into the slider, and I could just bring that down a little, maybe bring that down a little bit more, maybe say to 4.5. And we can see that I'm still over the ear, I'm under this strand here, and I'm completely below this plane that we've got there. Okay, so I'm happy with that. And so what I'd do then is I'd work through the rest of these individual strands, altering the heights and applying fades and tilts where necessary, until I have a part where everything looks as though it's blending into each other correctly, or they're sat in front or behind their neighbouring components. So I'm just going to skip the video ahead to that finished point. So here we are at a finished stage. So I've just spent a couple of minutes just tweaking with each of these strands, adding fades, tilts, where I felt was necessary. And you can see we've got quite a good result here. There's still some areas where one strand blends into another strand, but that's okay because we can look at using the sculpting tools shortly. So let's just go and tile our windows. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the components on the left hand side. So I'm going to select all of those, and then I'm going to select them again to put them into transform mode, and then we're just going to create a mirrored copy, flip about job center, create a mirrored copy. I'm going to flip that horizontal, and we can see we've got the main on the other side there. And so the next thing that we need to do is crop the underlying shape to the shape of our complete main. So to do that, I'm just going to switch off the base shapes, and I'm going to switch off the chin here. I'm also going to switch off the underlying shape for now. And with all of these components, what I'd like to do, the components that we can see in our 3D view here, I'm going to use this option to create a component from visible model. So I'm going to make sure my main level is the active level, and then we're going to create component from visible, and all that's going to do is just create one component based on what the software can see in the 3D view. So I can take all of these individual components, shift and select all of those, and then I'm just going to switch them off. And so you can see that we still have all of the individual strands here if we ever wanted to go back to them, but now I have one component that represents the entire main. So now if I switch on the underlined shape, what I'm going to do now is we're going to look at cropping that. So we're going to take that underlying shape, shift and select the main that we've got here, and then we're going to use this option here to clear area of selected component outside selected vectors, or in this case the component that we selected last. And we can see now that we've cropped the underlying shape to the shape of that visible model. So you can see that it's still taking the underlying shape there, so I can still switch that off if I wanted to, and I can switch that back on. So now we can go and switch on at the chin level, and we can switch on the base shapes. We can take a look at that. Let's just maximise the 3D view. And so that's our finished base shape. So let's just put that in the ISO view. And just to check the overall height, we can use the scale Z height of model. So hopefully, yep, we can see the maximum Z height is 1 inch, which is the top of our base shape. So then we can OK that. So that's all of the base shapes done. So you can see we've done quite a lot of modelling in there. But just to finish that off, what we could do is just apply a little bit of sculpting just to finish off the main in some of the areas where those parts blend into other components. So let's just go and take this component here, and then we're going to go into the sculpting tools. Let's just put that in Z, and I'm going to use the twiddle tool, number 6. I'm just going to zoom in here. Okay, and then we're just going to use the smooth tool, and I'm just going to bring the diameter down a little, and I'm just going to blend this area in here. Then I'm also going to blend this area in at the bottom here. I might want to use the smudge tool just to push some material down. And we'll go back to the smooth and come over this side. So again, we're just going to blend that material in there. I'm going to do that over here as well. Again, let's use the smudge tool just to push some of that material down. And I think we're okay. I think this bit's covered by the chin, so we'll just check that. So if we just press OK, yeah, we can see that there. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So that's our finished part. Let's just put that in ISO view And then at this point it would be a good idea to go and save the file. So we'll go to File, Save As, and then in the project folders we're going to call that lionbase.crv3d and then press Save. So the next set of shapes we're going to create are going to form the face shapes. And so the face shape is going to sit on top of this base shape using the pocket for the keyway when we come to run the toolpaths. Okay, so let's just close this down, and then we'll go and open up the face shapes. So go to File, Close, and then we'll go and open an existing file from the Lionhead Drawing Files project folder. We're going to open the line face and press Open. Okay, so you can see we've got the vectors that we drew in the vector drawing session. I also have additional vectors that I've put in this file, and they are our cross sections for some of the modelling tools that we'll be using shortly. So let's just go into the modelling tab, and we'll start by tiling our windows. And just to keep our component tree organised in advance, let's just right mouse click, rename that level. I'm just going to call this one the base shapes. And we need to organise our layers as well, so let's add in a new layer. We'll call this one components, and then we'll just move that on up in the list. So bring that just below the bitmap layer, and we'll make sure that that's the active layer so that any components we create will be added to this layer here. So let's go into the modelling tab. So let's go and create our first component. We're going to select this vector here, use the Create Shape tool. We're going to use a curved profile, and we're going to give that an angle of say 90 degrees just to push that all the way to the top. I'm going to scale that to an exact height of 0.2, so I'm going to press space to enter that in. And I'm going to give that component a name, so we'll just call this one base, set that to merge, and then we can press apply. I'm going to close that down. The next component I'd like to create will form the nose shape, and to do that I'm going to use the 2-rail sweep. So I've selected my 2 vectors that I'd like to act as drive rails, so now I can go into the 2-rail sweep form and say use selection. Now we need to apply a cross section, so I'm going to use this rounded shape at the bottom, apply that to the bottom there, but I'd like this shape to blend into the face shape at the top, so we're going to use this flat shape at the top there, so apply that to the end of the drive rails, and to give that a name we'll just call that one nose, press apply, you can see it's been added there. Let's start a new component. I'd like to create a little bit more emphasis on the nose, so I'm going to take these 2 vectors and change those into rails, so we're going to use selection, and in this case I'm going to apply a flat shape to the entire rail, and then I'm going to put this round shape in the middle. And so if we press apply, we can see the effect of that. So you can see we've got flat going into the round shape, going back into that flat shape at the bottom. So I'm just going to give that a name. We'll just call this one detail, and I can press apply. And then we can close that form down. Next shape I'd like to create is going to form this snout area here. So we're going to take that vector, we're going to go back into the Create Shape tool. Again, we're going to use a round profile, and then we could select the angle. In this case I'd like to maximize that. Let's just set that to merge so we can see how that looks. And in this case what I would like to do is maybe apply a tilt. So I'm going to use the tilt option, so I need to set my anchor point. So I'm going to go from the bottom to the top. Okay, so you can see it's done that at 10 degrees, which is a little bit too much there, so I'm just going to reduce that down just using the slider. Okay, so that's not too bad, 1.6 is okay. Scale that to 0.35, and then we're going to give that a name. We're going to call this one snout, then we can press apply, and then we can close that down. Okay, so here we have the base shapes. Now what I'd like to do is just apply a little smooth over some of the components where they blend together. Now I'd still like to keep the individual components, so I'm going to use this option here to create component from visible model. And then I'm going to select the snout, shift and select the base so that they're all selected, and then I'm just going to uncheck them, so we're just working with the one component. And so I'm going to select that component. We're going to go into the sculpting tools, and then all I'm going to do is just use the smooth, bring my diameter up, and then just increase the strength. I'm just going to go over these areas at the top here and on the side over here. So just really blending those into the base shape. And I could just decrease the diameter and then blend over this area at the bottom here where the nose joins into the snout area. What I'm doing is just going back and forth, holding the left mouse key down. I could just reduce the strength a little and just go over this area here and around the side just to smooth that over. Okay, so I'm happy with that, so I'll say keep and OK. Let's put that back in Z. So now we're ready to create the shapes that represent the details of the face. So let's just insert a new level. So we'll go to Insert New Level, and we're going to rename this level and call this one Details. Let's just minimize the base shapes. Make sure that the details level is the active level, and then we can start to create some of our components. So I'm going to select this vector here. Okay, just to help me, I'm just going to come over here just to take that guide off so I can't see that. So just click in this square, this rectangular area here. So with that vector selected, let's go into the Create Shape form. I'm going to go with a curved profile 90 degrees. In this case I'm going to scale that to an exact height, say 0.5. Let's press apply and zoom in to take a look at that. Could maybe up that up a little bit to try 0.07. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Let's give that a name. We'll call that one Nose, and then we could press apply, and then we could go and start a new component. This time I'm going to select this cheek vector here. Let's just zoom in so we can see. And with that we're going to go with a curved profile 90 degrees, and let's just scale this. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, so that's too much. Let's just bring that down to say 0.15, press apply. Okay, so that's just okay, that's not too bad. Let's give that a name, so we'll go and call that one Cheek. And then we could go ahead and press apply. And then we'll start a new component. Then we're going to take this vector here, this under eye area. I'm going to give that a round profile, 90 degrees. Here we're just going to go and scale that, say 0.1, and press apply, see how that looks. Maybe you could reduce that a little, so maybe make that 0.075. Press apply. We could give that a name. We'll just call this under eye. Press apply, then we'll start a new component. I'm going to select the eye area here. Okay, again, round 90 degrees. I'm going to scale that to try 0.1, and then we'll call that one eye and press apply. Okay, so that looks okay. Then we could select this vector here. Oh, I didn't apply that properly, so let's go back to the eye vector, press apply. And what I should have done was press start new component. So then we're going to select this under eye area here, this eyelid shape. Again, round profile 90 degrees, scale that to say 0.01, press apply. Okay, you could increase that a little bit, maybe make that 0.02, press apply, and then we'll give that a name, call that eyelid, apply that, and then we'll start a new component. This time I want to create the iris, so to do that I'm going to select this vector and shift and select this vector. In this case I'm going to go with an angled profile, and we're just going to try say 40 in this case. We're going to limit the height of this, so we're going to make sure that the height's limited to a specific value. So if I put in 0.02, we can press apply, and it's going to limit that to the point where it gets to 0.02, so you can see that there. However, I'd like to set that to subtract, and so we can see how that looks. That looks good to me, so we'll just give that a name. We'll just call that one iris, press apply, and then we can go and start a new component. We'll create the last one here, which is this forehead shape. We're going to go for a round profile, so we're working with a sort of rounded shape, and we're going to go knock that up all the way up to 90 degrees. Okay, we can still see it's currently set to subtract, so let's make that add. Okay, I'm happy with that, and so then we could give that a name, call that one forehead, press apply, and then we could go ahead and close this down. So let's have a look at the eye. So we can see the iris is now subtracting into the forehead shape. Now what I want to do is crop that part of the eye so it doesn't interfere with the shape of the forehead. So to do that, I'm just going to click in the space just to deselect that vector and select the eye, press Ctrl and select the iris, and then I'm going to hold down Shift and select that forehead vector, and I'm going to clear everything inside of that vector. Software will warn me that we need to bake that. That's okay, I'm happy to do that, so we can press OK. We can see now that it's not subtracting into the forehead because we have no shape there anymore. So I'm happy with what we've got there. Okay, and that last set of components we need to create are going to form the whiskers. So let's just move this over a little bit. So you can see we've got some vectors here. So these are cross sections, simply a flat shape with a rounded shape. And so we're going to select all of these vectors here by pressing Shift to select them. We're going to use the extrude tool in this case, like we've done in other examples previous to this. I'm going to say use selection and select that flat shape. I'm going to apply that to all of those rails, and then we're going to select that rounded shape and just apply that to the center of each one of those rails and give that a name. I'm going to call this one whiskers, press apply. You can see how that's looking there in the 3D view. However, I'd like to set that to subtract, and so I'm happy with the results there. So we can see we're coming in from nothing because of that flat vector, and then we're going into that rounded shape back to nothing. Let's just apply those changes, and then we can close that form down. So the next thing that we need to do is just look at some simple finishing. And so I'm going to start by looking at this under eye area here. Now what I'd like to do is just blend the areas, the edge of this under eye area into the base shape that's underneath there. So to do that, I'm going to look at using the sculpting tools. I'm going to select the eyelid, shift and select that under eye area, and then we'll go and use the sculpting tools. It's going to warn me that we need to bake that. I'm happy to make those changes. So I'm going to use a smooth tool. Now in this case, what I'd like to do is undraw the preserve transparency. That will enable me to draw into the 0 plane or the modelling plane. So I'm going to make sure that my strength is down to 1, and then I'm just going to sketch over, sort of draw an outline of that shape like you can see here. And then I'm going to check that back on. I'm going to bring the strength up a little, and then what I'm able to do now is blend the edges of the component that we've got here into this sort of 0 plane or the modelling plane that I've just drew in there. And so we can do that by just simply going around and just blending those in. So all I'm doing is just going back and forth, and you can see the changes being made there. You can see that shadow area is showing us how that smooth over is going to look with the shapes that's underneath it. And we can do that because I've got the show grayscale background switched on, and so that's useful for things like this. So we just keep going around here. We'll go around the top. So I can see that all of the edges appear to be very smooth now, and so that we should see a nice smooth transition between this component and the base shape that's below it. So let's just press keep, and then we press OK to take a look at that. So you can see that smooth transition going into that base shape there thanks to the sculpting tools. Another way we can apply that look is by using the smooth filter. So let's take the cheek shape and go into the smooth filter. Okay, so normally when we use a smooth filter, we quite often have preserve transparency checked, and that means that when we create the smooth, it's creating it to the constraints of the shape of the component. If we undraw that, what we're doing now is we're smoothing into the plane. So you can see in the 2D view, you can see this sort of border that we've got, and we can see that it's blending into the base shapes underneath, just as we did when we sculpted the under eye area. So I can maximize that to increase that, and so you can see it's starting to come into the 0 plane now. If I bake that again, just to apply another maximum smooth over, you can see how it's starting to transition into the base shapes, and we're getting a real nice smooth blend between the two. I'm just going to press bake again until I'm happy with what we've got. Just do it one more time. I think that will be enough. So you can see now I've got some nice smooth shapes, smooth transitions between this cheek area and going into the base shapes, and we haven't really had to do any form of sculpting for this at all, and so it's a real simple tool to use to create this effect. So let's just OK that, and we're going to do the same for the forehead. So we'll take that, we'll go into the smooth filter. Again, make sure that preserve transparency is switched off, maximize the smoothing, let's bake it, and we'll bake it again. We'll just keep baking it until I'm happy with what we've got. Okay, so I'm happy with that. We can OK that. Okay, so I think we've got some nice smooth shapes in there. So what we can do now is we can take the whiskers, the forehead, the eye, the under eye, the cheek, but not the nose. And we're going to take all of those, and we're going to mirror those. So we're going to say flip horizontal, flip about job center, create mirrored copy. We'll flip horizontal. And so you can see that we've got the right hand side of our face. Let's just close that down. I'm just going to zoom to fit and put this in Z. So what we need to do is tidy up the areas where this smooth filter had bled into the 0 plane. So before I do that, I'm just going to switch off the base shapes. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create a component from the visible model, and I'm going to take all of these individual components and just switch them off for now, and then we'll switch the base shapes back on. Okay, so now we've just got a copy of all of the details of the face, and then we've got a copy of just the base shapes. So now we can take the details here. I'm going to shift and select that vector, and we're going to clear everything outside of that vector, so you can see now we've got it right to the shape of our face. Let's just maximize the 3D view and take a look at that. Now we can see, if I just switch the details level off, you can see where our nose is blending into the base shape. We can see that's been transmitted into the forehead area here. So I just need to do a little bit of smoothing on that. So I'm going to take the base shape, the copy of the visible model, we're going to go into the sculpting tools. I'm going to look at using the smooth tool. So I'm going to use the smooth tool, just bring the strength right up. I'll just increase the diameter a little, and all I'm going to do is just go over the top area just to try and eliminate that ridge that we've got there. Do that on the other side as well. Let's just blend all of that together, and then let's just press OK and see how that looks. Okay, so that's better. That's not transmitting through the forehead area now because we've smoothed that out. Let's just put that back in Z, and as a final adjustment what we could do is look at maybe increasing the shape height of this. So let's just go to the base shapes and just check the height of that. Okay, so maybe make that 0.4, press space to enter that in, and then we'll go to the details and select that one. Maybe we could even afford to bring this up to say 0.3, maybe even increase it just a little bit more. Let's try 0.35. So we're really just trying to emphasize that detail there. Okay, so I'm happy with that, so we can close that down. And so at this stage it'd be a good idea to go and save this file. So let's go to File, Save As. We'll go into the Modeling folder. Let's go to Files. I'm going to call this one Lion Face. Press Save, and you can access that in the project folder. So now that we've modelled the 3 key areas that make up our lion head door knocker, we can now take those files, look at running some toolpaths and cut that out on our CNC machine. Now the toolpath side of things will be covered in the toolpath summary presentation video. So let's just remind ourselves what we've done in this session. So we started off by modelling the handle using the extrude tool along with a 2-rail sweep for the lock and the pendant area. Once we created that, we moved on to the base shapes. We looked at all 3 modelling tools in this case, where we looked at the create shape tool, 2-rail sweep and the extrude tool. We took the vectors from the handle and we created this recessed area with a small offset. And the reason for that is so that we can lock the handle in place when we come to fix the part together. Once we had modelled everything in the base shapes, we looked at some of the sculpting tools to just finish off the main area. And then we moved on to the face shapes. Again, we looked at all the different tools to model in the face shapes. And so here on the right hand side is just a little visualization of how the part will look, where the face will sit on top of this base shape using a pocket system. So we've got the keyway vector in which we will create a pocket on the base shape, and we'll create a pocket on the underside of the face shape, along with a recess handle area and on the underside of the face shape as well. And all of this will be covered in the toolpaths section. And as I said, the toolpaths will be covered in the toolpath summary presentation video.